Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is the YHUHderek channel. I am Ayana, and I will be your facilitator today. Today, we will be talking about Yahudyath, which is the language of Yasharal, and how that it is Yasharal's only language. But first, as always, thank you for your support. I would like to thank these two donators for helping to continue to propel the YHUHderek channel. As always, your donations help keep our channel going. Without you, it would be very difficult, and making videos would be far and few in between. Now, we do have two avenues for donation. The first one is PayPal, YHUHderek at mail.com, not Gmail, just mail. You can find our PayPal avenue for donations through there. And then the second avenue is CashApp, and that would be $YHUHderek. Lastly, we have digital downloads. Right now, we have the current calendar for this year. We have the full calendar, and we have a desktop version of the 8 Feast of Yahuwah. You can find it here at shoply.com/YHUHderek. As always, thank you so very much for supporting the channel. We appreciate it and hope that you enjoy the rest of this video. All right, so in this video, we will review that Aramaic and Yahudyath were two completely different, separate languages, and we went over that, but we'll do a refresh. You can find that in 2 Kings chapter 18, 17 through 37. The second point we'll show you is that Yahudyath is different than Babylonian language also, because if you recall in the video, what Hebrew isn't, we talked about the Assyrians, and when they captured Yasharal, or right before they captured Yasharal, how the languages were completely different. So this time we're going to show the Babylonians. We're also going to show the double meaning of Yahuwah's writing on the wall, if you can recall that story with the Babylonians. And then also we'll show you another instance in scripture where Yahudyath can't be understood by people other than Yasharal. And lastly, we'll go over Psalms 83. So let's get started. So like I said before, this is a thumbnail that you can find. It's a video on the YHUHderek channel. Should Hebrew be called Hebrew? I just want to briefly go over what we showed, because this is a slow build-up and confirmation of the Yahudyath language. So in this video, I introduced the correct name of the language that of Yasharal, which was Yahudyath. And you can find that with that Strong's number. And I also discussed why it's not Hebrew, right? And the definition of Hebrew, or of Hebrew, is a term that means one from the other side of the water, right? Then again, what Hebrew isn't. This is the thumbnail. This is also on the YHUHderek channel. I showed that Yahudyath was a very different and separate language from Aramaic/Syrian. And that's from the Assyrians, right? They use that language, Aramaic, Syrian. So much so that the people of Yasharal couldn't understand the Assyrian official speech. And you can see 3 instances of this story in 2 Kings, Isaiah, and 2 Chronicles. All right, so now let's go on. This is the third video, and this is the second proof that Yahudyath is a language unto itself. In Daniel chapter 5, King Belshazzar is having a party with his princes, his wives, and his concubines. Everybody's invited, right? This is a summation of the story, because it's pretty lengthy, so I couldn't put all of the verses on there. He orders the golden vessels that his father, or more actually his grandfather Nebuchadnezzar, he orders that those golden vessels from Yahuwah's temple be brought in so that everybody in a party can drink from them. While drinking from those vessels, the wine and everything that they're drinking, they praise false deities, deities of gold, silver, brass, iron, wood, and stone. So just everybody. Every false deity they can come up with, they toast, right? They give a toast to. As they're doing this, he sees fingers in the shape of a man's hand right on the wall, a message. It frightens him so bad that his knees actually knocks together, and that's actually in scripture. I'm not making that part up. Lastly, he then calls all the wise men of Babel or Babylon to read and interpret the writing for him. So that is the setup to what we're going to talk about now. So particularly in verses 8 and 11, then came out all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation thereof. The queen suggests Belshazzar call Daniel, who is the master of the wise men, when Belshazzar's grandfather Nebuchadnezzar was the king. He made Daniel the master of the wise men. So at this point, where Belshazzar is ruling, Daniel is an older man. He's not in his youth. So he's the master of the wise men, which are the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers that the king initially called for, who could not understand, who couldn't read the writing or even interpret what it meant. All right. So a little background, you see a picture here. I did a little bit of research on, the building of the temple, of the tabernacle. So the utensils, the golden utensils, were used on the table of showbread, which is why I have this picture here. There was bowls, there were ladles, there were all kinds of things. So these are the items that the Babylonian king and all his guests were drinking out of. So this is the best picture that I could find. All right, so let's get in. Who are these wise men, to get a better understanding of who the king called? So magician, it's the word kartam. All right, these are actually Egyptian priests who read the sacred writings, which are a lot of spells in Egypt. And they're reading what's called hieroglyphics. Now, in the Cometian tongue, because Kemet was the city that the Egyptians lived in. The Egyptians were Mitzrayim. Kemet is Mitzrayim's ancestor, right? Which is actually Kim, which is Kam, one of Noah's sons. Mitzrayim was his son, and these are the descendants. So, hieroglyphics is a Greek word, right? But the real word is Medu Netor. So the language, the Egyptian priests would read all of the spells that were written in Medu Netor. What's written in astrologer, and this is based off the King James Version of Scripture, is the word a shop, right? A shop, or some people will say ASAP, but it's a shop. They are enchanters. These are people who actually speak out spells, right? They are spell casters. The Chaldeans, which were a small group within the land of Babel. You had the Assyrians, you had the Babylonians, and then you had the Chaldeans, right? Now, the Assyrians made their own culture and their own cities within the area known as Shinar, right? In scripture, the Babylonians kept to themselves and they made their own society, but there was a small group of people the Chaldeans. And as you know, that Abraham and Lot were Chaldean before they moved into the land of Canaan. So these are Chaldean/Babylonian men who would prophesy and perform magic. So far you got people who read spells from Medu Neter. You got people who are actually spellcasters, otherwise known as witches. And then the Chaldeans, they are wizards and a prophecy. Lastly, we've got soothsayer, right? And that's the word gazer, or gezer in common language. These were the real astrologers, right? These are people who looked up at the stars, right, and used what we call the zodiac today. If you recall, in examining the moon, I believe it was part 3, that the whole so-called zodiac that we call today was actually called Mazaluth, and out of Mazaluth, you get the phrase today that Jewish people use, Mazel Tov, which means good fortune. It doesn't mean cheers, it means good fortune. So the zodiac in scripture is called a Mazaluth. So these guys actually look at the Mazaluth or the zodiac. They interpret the stars and their meaning of a person's fate according to their birthday, right? We call that astrology, right? What's your astrological sign? When were you born? Oh yeah, these kind of people born on this month, they behave like this, which is totally absurd, but people have been doing it for a very long time, millennia, and there you go. So there's the 4 groups right there: the Kartam, the Ashap, the Kashadyah, right, Chaldeans, and the Gazer. By the way, Gazer is, like I said, stargazer. We say gazer, right? Stargazers. Okay, so in verses 25 through 30, this is where Daniel, he's been called. He is reading off what's written on the wall, and he's telling King Belshazzar what it means. And so what the words means, what was written on the wall was mana mana thequal paras, right? Paras. So, this is what each of those words mean. Mana, which is written twice, meaning that it is an emphasis on this word, and it's also a definitive declaration. It means to number, to appoint, or to divide. Yahweh wrote it twice because he means that you have definitely been numbered. Ultimately, you've been numbered, you've been counted, your kingdom's been counted. It's finished, right? Thequal, there's the Strong's numbers. It means to weigh, to be heavy, right? Paras, or some people say faras, but it's paras without vowel pointing, and it means to break in pieces or to divide or cut. So Yahuwah's meaning is Yahuwah has finished his kingdom, Belshazzar's kingdom. The king has been measured and found lacking, right? And his kingdom will be divided. Now, what many people don't know is that mana mana thequal paras has a double entendre. It means 2 things. Not only that Yahuwah will end the kingdom, but it also means the manner of the king's death, Belshazzar and his kingdom. It means that Belshazzar will be cut, divided again, and he will be killed by the Persians. Paras not only means to break in pieces, but that's actually the name of the Persians, Paras, right? Parasya is the Persians. So not only does it mean his kingdom will end, but he will die by cutting. This can be confirmed by looking at verse 30. It says, and the king was slain that night. That word slain, when you look at verse 30, is quatal, H6992, and it means to kill by cutting. So Yahuwah told him, no, he told Belshazzar not only that his kingdom would end, that his soul was pretty much not able to be saved, right? He's been weighed and he's been found lacking. And that his kingdom would be divided, but he also said that the king himself will die by the Persians by being cut. All right, so that's one piece of, that's a second testimony from scripture showing that Yahudyath is a separate language unto itself. Now here's the third example. Okay, so now we're going to go to Nehemiah 13:23 through 27. This section I titled Mixed Marriages, Mixed Languages. So, in verses 23 and 24, you can read the rest yourself, but I wanted to concentrate on these two verses because this is where the essential part is. In those days, I saw Yasharal men that married wives of Ashdod, of Ammon, and of Moab. And their children spoke half in the speech of Ashdod, and could not speak in Yahudyath, but in the language of each people. So, according to the verses here, these two verses, the biracial children of the Yasharal men who married wives outside of Yasharal, their children did not know how to speak their own dad's language, right? Instead, they spoke the languages of their mothers, half Yahudyath and half Canaanite or Babylonian, which is Phoenician or Aramaic as far as the language. And the reason why there's question marks there is because although Lot's descendants, Moab and Ammon, lived in Canaanite territory, like where they lived was actually in Canaan, and you can find confirmation of that in Genesis 10:19. It's not clear if they were considered Canaanites and spoke Yahudyath or Phoenician as we know it today, or if they kept their ancestors' language, meaning Lot's language. Because remember, I said a couple of slides ago that Lot and Abraham were from Chaldea, right? Of the Chaldees, and they would have spoken Babylonian or Aramaic. So it's not sure which language that they spoke, but to be clear, they didn't speak Yahudyath, right? So, likewise with Yahudyath, which is the language of Ashdod, the Ashdod women, it's not known if they spoke Phoenician, Greek, or some sort of Egyptian dialect. And the reason for that is that the Ashdod are actually Philistines in scripture, right? But when you look up the history of the Philistines, they were descendants of Egyptians who moved and lived in Crete. And I have a small map here at the bottom left-hand corner where you see Crete in red. It's that they lived in Crete. And it's not known, I couldn't find whether they were forcibly removed from Crete or they came to Canaan and forcibly took over their territories there. But they lived on the edge of Canaanite territory as you get to like Arabia and Sinai. So they lived along those borders there. Now, scripturally speaking, they actually had 5 cities. Most famously, here. They were definitely enemies of Yasharal. You'll hear on, if you read 1 Sam, all of chapter 5, that's when they took the Ark of the Covenant and they had all those issues. I know that they worshipped a false deity. It's in that chapter, but that's why it's not certain what language that they spoke, whether it was the Egyptian dialect or Greek, or if they spoke some form of, let me go back, some form of Phoenician or Canaaniyeth. So I don't know either any of these groups what definitively they spoke. Sorry, going backwards. All right, so the second group, Amnon and Moab, these are the descendants of Lot's incestuous children that he had with his daughters after the fall of Sodom and Gomorrah. You can read there. These verses here talk about that they were both enemies of Yasharal also, even though they were told not to, Yasharal was told not to fight them when they were first entering into the promised land, because a portion of Canaan was supposed to be Lot's portion of the land, but later on they were definitely enemies of Yasharal. You can find their stories here, Genesis 19:30-34 and Numbers 22:1-21. So Yasharal men had no interest in having their children preserve their language, even in the midst of rebuilding their homeland, which is the verses in Nehemiah. They're coming back from exile. They're starting to build up the walls to Yasharal, and they had it built, and they were starting to reestablish the customs in the covenant that Yahweh, and even in the midst of that, they did not have their children learn the language. But the main points of these verses is to show a third witness that Yahudyath was its own self-contained language in history. And scriptures record these three instances. The instance with the Assyrians, where the Assyrian, one of the officials of the Assyrian king, came to speak with, I believe it was Hezekiah, but I could be wrong. And the court officials of the king of Yasharal did not want the Syrian representative to speak, because there were people on the wall, people of Yasharal on the wall. They didn't want him to speak in Yahudyath. They wanted him to speak Syrian or Aramaic, and he instead spoke Yahudyath so that everybody on the wall could understand. Second witness is the Babylonians couldn't read or interpret the writing on the wall. They didn't understand it. And this last example here is when they're coming back from exile. They're rebuilding Yasharal, and the men of Yasharal who took foreign wives, their children could not speak it. So all of these groups did not know Yahudyath. Those are the main points of this video. This is more build-up of the proof that Yahudyath is not the same. And we believe that today, but it's not the same, right? So you can look through here. It's just pretty much a repeat. This is the third witness with this video here. With this video here, you can go through and read this. But I'm building a case here that I want all of the people of Yasharal to understand and not go along what is being said today. Just one moment, please. All right, sorry about that. It's allergy season and it's just been rough. Okay, so conclusion. Why have I gone through this in this video and the previous two other videos? Why is this important? Because looking at today, we, as in people all over the earth, people who are studying scripture, people who use lexicons and concordances to try to get a deeper understanding, including me, because we are being told today by theologians, archaeologists, religious leaders, and various other groups, people who compile books of so-called understanding, we are being told that all those languages that I went over, Aramaic, which is also called Syrian, Babylonian, which is I just drew a blank. I'm so sorry. Babylonian language, uh, the language of Ashdod, the Egyptian priest and everyone, the Chaldeans, everyone could not understand Yahudyath. But yet today, when we look up words, there is Chaldean in lexicons, there is Aramaic. Aramaic is the main one. They say, oh, Aramaic. It wasn't Hebrew, it's Aramaic. Yahusha did not speak Hebrew, it's Aramaic. Even though when you read the scriptures, when Yahusha was being hung up on a tree, it clearly says that Pontius Pilate wrote in Greek and in Hebrew and in Latin, right? He wrote King of the Yahudis, right? King of the Jews. It says Hebrew. But when you look it up in the lexicon, it says, oh, well, it wasn't really Hebrew, it was Aramaic. Aramaic is a Syrian language. Modern Hebrew letters, as they call it, that's Assyrian. That is Aramaic is Assyrian, right? The Babylonians adopted Aramaic after they conquered the Assyrians for a short while. Remember, they all live in the same area. They all lived in the same part of land, even though they were separate groups. The Chaldeans, the Assyrians, and the Babylonians. So they used Aramaic also, and then as Aramaic going into starting at like 200 AD, it turned into the word Syrian. So when you look at these concordances, you have Aramaic, you have Chaldean, you have all kinds, you have Arabic in there. They're telling you that all these languages they've used to compile Hebrew, and it's a lie. Scripture, according to Yahuwah and his scripture, this is a lie. Yahudyath was a separate language. And by accepting this and going along with this belief and practice, we, the believers in Yahuwah, the believers in Yahusha, the ones who are actually following the covenant as it is written and not interpreted, we are mixing, if we keep believing and practicing this, we are mixing linen and wool, which Yahuwah said, don't do it. Don't mix it. There is a need to make a lexicon that has true Yahudyath language in it. Someone who is intelligent and brilliant and baruched by Yahuwah needs to make that lexicon, right? But until such a time as that happens, we have to know and keep in mind that what is currently being used has an element in it to cause confusion. It is not the same. Aramaic is not the same as Yahudyath. Okay? Phoenician is not the same as Yahudyath. Okay? Egyptian hieroglyphics is not the same as Yahudyath. Any type of Greek dialect, Egyptian dialect, whatever the Ashdod people spoke, is not the same as Yahudyath. A clever lie is always blended with some truth. and to show that there is definitely some sort of conspiracy and an effort to get rid of the Yahudyath language, and they've already tried to get rid of the scriptural Yasharal people. I'm going to go over, I took the time to define Psalm 83. And it's different than what's behind the words in English. I put it here, and we'll go over it now to emphasize what I'm talking about. Keep not your silence, Alua, which is Yahuwah. Don't hold your cutting tool. Do not be tranquil, Alua. Behold, your enemies make an uproar, and they that hate you lift up their head. They have taken crafty, secret counsel against your people, and advised against your hidden treasure, which is again the people, and again his word. They have said, come, let us hide and destroy their people, that the memory of the name of Yasharal not continue. They have consulted together with one heart, and they cut a covenant. No scripture says that. They have cut a covenant on it. The tabernacles of Edom, who is Esau, or Ashu more properly, and the Ishmaelites, that's Hagar's son with Abraham. Moab, one of the groups we talked about today, and the Hagarenes. We talked about the Philistines, that they were a descendants of Egypt. Hagar was Egyptian. Okay. Hagar and her son, and Esau. Gabal. This city was called Byblos, or Biblios. This is where they made Bibles, which is why the Bible is called that. It's also the name of a deity. Byblos. Gabal. Ammon. Amalek, which is Esau's grandson. The Philistines, we talked about them, Greek, Egyptian. The inhabitants of Tyre. Ashur, that's the Assyrians, joined with them, and they have strengthened the children of Lot, which is Moab and Ammon. Salah. That definitely needs a moment of silence. Need to think on that. Do unto them as the Midianites, which was Abraham's son by Keturah. As Sisera, as Jabin, Sisera's king, at the brook of Kishon, who died at Endor. They become as dung for the earth. Make their princes like Oreb and like Zeb. Slay all their princes like Zebah and as Salmunna, who said, let us take for ourselves the worship houses of Alua for a possession. Did they not do that? Alua, make a whirlwind of dust. Make them a whirlwind of dust. And as the chaff before the wind, as fire burns a forest, as the flame sets the mountains on fire, so pursue them with your rage, and make them terrified of your storm. Fill their faces with disgrace, that they may seek your name, Yahuwah, and let them be ashamed and terrified forever. Let them be dishonored and destroyed, that they may know that you, whose name alone is Yahuwah, are the Most High over all the earth. I would like to thank you today for watching the video, spending time, getting some education. And here are the resources that I used. And thank you so much. May Yahuwah lay this upon your heart, that pray that someone on the earth who has Yahuwah's special barakah to understand his language, provide us with a much needed resource that's not been infiltrated. May Yahuwah Baruch you and your family and keep you protected as always. Thank you and shalom.